but not immediate.
Okay.
Yeah. What we're going to do today is we're going to start a new set of notes that has to do with the last step in the criminal justice process. What we're going to have a chance just to start today is going to be our sentencing and punishment notes. Now here's the deal. For the sentencing and punishment notes, I really need just probably a couple of days for this. So today what we're going to do is we're going to talk about some basic ideas of this step in the criminal justice process. And some of these things might be a bit of review. So I do want to talk first about how we get to this step. Being this is the last step in the criminal justice process, we got to kind of back up a little bit. And we got to talk about all the things that it takes to even get here. Now, I will tell you, let's brainstorm some things, but I guarantee you, we're going to miss some. So let me just ask you, what is the very first step of the criminal justice process? What has to happen absolutely first? Is that what you say?
The initial hearing.
Even before that.
Somebody has to be charged with the crime.
Let's do it. Even before that.
Arrested.
You can say the crime has to happen, and then
They have to be arrested.
gotta get arrested. So then what?
Then charged with the crime.
We could say it. What about like Miranda rights?
Oh,
Then do that, then you're charged. So now we can even talk like trial. What happens at trial? What's the due process? What are you guaranteed to have? You get a lawyer, what else?
a quick and speedy trial.
Speedy and public trial. What else do you get usually? You guys didn't have it.
The jury.
You get a jury, sure. All these things have to take place, and everything has to line up in order to get to this one moment. Now, all those things happen in your case, and still, defendant's found not guilty. So it's a long process. Now, if your defendant is found guilty, now is the time for sentencing. Now, the sentencing being the final step in the process, all these other things have to take place before we get to that. And the defendant has to be found guilty. Now, like I was telling you, we did a bench trial because we had to. In jury trial, one person says you're not guilty, you're going home. But if all 12 jurors say, yes, you are guilty of this, now it's time for sentencing. Now, the way that it works is usually, and I say it because there are some instances where this happens. Usually what takes place is the jury just writes out their decision and hands it to the judge. Now, it can be kind of strange and informal, where they can actually just like on a piece of paper say, we find this person not guilty of first degree, not guilty of second degree, but guilty of manslaughter. They just write it down. The judge looks at it and he reads it. And then he's the one who says, again, usually. So he asks the people of this jury, how do you find the defendant of charges of first degree murder? They say, not guilty. How do you find this defendant of second degree murder? Not guilty, whatever it is. If it's guilty, what the judge usually does then is says, jury, thank you for your service. You fulfilled your civic duty. You can go home. Usually their job is done. It's most of the time the judge gets to decide what the sentence is. Now, there are instances where the jury can say what the sentencing is. It depends, but it's few and far between. Now, we've kind of talked about how usually when it comes to sentencing, there are maximum penalties and there are minimum penalties. So in a case like this of first degree murder, second degree manslaughter, you could say, if you're guilty of this, the worst you could have is this. The easiest you have is this. Now, I'll throw it out there. If our defendant was guilty of first degree murder, what's at the very top? What could the sentence be? Could be the death penalty. I seriously doubt a battered woman's getting the death penalty, even if she's guilty of first degree murder. The low end is 30 years in prison. That's the minimum. So it can be anywhere in there. It's really up to the judge to determine. Now, you can also kind of throw some other things in there. There are some other sentences that you could either choose from or pile on top. So what we're going to talk about today are going to be some lighter sentences and some harsher sentences. Now, I will tell you, some of these we've already talked about in the past, so some of these might be a bit of review, but I want to be certain that we compartmentalize it, that we kind of put them in categories. So what we're going to do first is we're going to talk about some lighter sentencing options. Now, let me put this in context. If you're on trial for first degree, second degree manslaughter, lighter sentences are not an option. Not going to happen. But if you're on trial for a speeding ticket, such as myself, these lighter sentences are in play. Now, I believe I told you guys, maybe I didn't. In Wyoming, if you're going over 100 miles an hour, they can take you to jail. Did I tell you guys about this? I did not? Okay.
My dad told me about it.
Long story short, when I was in Wyoming, speeding, my fault, I did it. I got caught doing 92 miles an hour. And I thought I was going faster than that. I remember, pulled over on the side of the road, as the police officer's walking up to me, I thought, I'm going to jail for speeding. And Mama Nance is not going to be happy about it. It was potential on the table. Thank goodness I must have hit the brakes to go around a turn or something, because I was doing well over 100. But, want to talk lighter sentencing first. When we're talking lighter sentences, I want to give you just a few examples here. First one is probation. Now again, we've kind of talked about this in passing, so maybe this is going to be a review, but probation simply says, as long as you fulfill one or a handful of particular court orders, as long as you don't violate these, you're not going to jail. But we do have our eye on you. If you violate one of these court orders, then you're going to jail. So that prospect is very much in play. Now, I had someone just yesterday ask me, what are some of these court orders, what are examples of some of these? It can be a whole wide range of things, but a lot of times, if you're on probation, the court says, you cannot leave this state. Because if you leave the state and you get caught doing something else, then state between state gets messy. So we're just going to tell you, don't cross a state line. If you do and you get caught, you're going to jail. Now also, if you're on probation, they can say things like, you are subject to random drug and alcohol tests. If you fail one of those, you're going to jail. This is part of your probation. But at least you're not in prison. So probation is an option that the court can use. Now there's also going to be what's called the suspended sentence. Now suspended sentence and probation have some similarities to each other, so I want to be certain I'm clear. A suspended sentence simply just means, we've convicted you. You can go to prison, but we're going to pause on sending you there. We're going to give you another shot. We're going to suspend your sentence for X amount of time. And if you can prove to me that you're not a danger to society, if you can in fact not get in trouble for X amount of time, then we will waive your prison sentence. So again, they're kind of similar in certain ways. With a suspended sentence, that sentence is hanging over you. It can be implied at any time. But what the court is saying is, we're not going to send you to jail just yet, as long as you can prove to us you're not a danger. Now, next one is home arrest. Now, I will tell you, this has been used way more often in the past year than any other time. But I don't know if you know this or not, this year has been weird. Even before this year, really for the past, probably about 5, 6, 7 years, they've been using more and more home arrest than they ever had before. Really what home arrest is just saying, you're not going to jail, but you are confined to your home. You cannot leave your house for this period of time. But at least you're not in prison. Now I want to ask, why do you think states have been using this more and more recently? And I'm not talking about this year. I'm talking about in years past. Even what do you think? Prisons are crowded. You're absolutely right. That's part of it. Sure. Ella, something else? It's expensive to have someone in jail. If you're staying at home, all the state has to pay for is the ankle monitor. Now it can get expensive, but not nearly as much as having someone in prison. Yes, sir.
So that means the food and everything they have to pay for themselves?
Yep.
So then how do they pay for it if they don't have a job because they're not allowed to go out?
Figure it out. No, I hear what you're saying. That kind of thing is taken into account. Where, and again, you sort of have to say, you're allowed to leave your house for these times or these reasons, but they can watch where you're going because the ankle lock. So if you're going to the grocery store, that's fine. You can do that. Now, let's go ahead and shift. Let's talk some harsher punishments. Now, harsher punishments, again, used for harsher crimes, but it's completely up to the judge how he wants to sentence someone. So I want to give you the first one. First one can be fine or restitution. Now, I put this in the harsher category because paying a fine can be something real small. If you have a speeding ticket, a few $100s, not a real big deal. But if it's a real serious crime, you can pay huge amounts of money. It's perfectly legal to fine someone millions and millions of dollars. Now, I use that example because it comes back to restitution. I want to explain what this is because restitution can be a criminal punishment. So this is not a civil suit. It's not suing someone. The court can say, we need restitution of $1 million because of what you did to someone else. And if the court wants restitution, they say, well, actually, let me use this example. Have you guys ever heard of a man named Bernie Madoff? Maybe a little bit? Okay. Long story short, what he did is he created like this pyramid scheme, this Ponzi scheme, where people gave him, I forget the exact number, I think it was like $200 million to invest. And he didn't invest it, he just kept it. So he just has $200 million of other people's money that he just spent. So the court said, to make it right, we're fining you $200 million. But that money doesn't go to the people that he stole from. It goes to the state. What? Because it's not a civil suit, it's criminal. Now, those people could sue Bernie Madoff later, but this is the state bringing the charges. Now, next one is what's called work release. Now, for this, you're going to jail. You're in prison, but there's a stipulation. Every morning, when it's time for you to go to work, you're let out of prison. They let you go to work. They let you work at your job for whatever it is, 8, 9, 10 hours, however you're doing it. And then once that day of work is finished, you go back to jail. Now again, you're still in prison, but at least you have some time outside. Now, with that said, again, I kind of want to ask, what's the benefit for the state here? Why would they let you go to work and then come back? What do you think? Sam, what do you think?
Well, since technically when you're in prison, you're a member of the state, so anything that you earn during that time period goes to the state, so it's a little less expensive during that time period, right?
That part of it's right. It's less expensive because you're not there for a chunk of the day. But you're on the right track. Why else do you think they want you to go to work? Oh, good. I'm glad we did this. If you go to work, you have income. Even, what do you think?
I don't know.
Oh, what do you think? It's taxable. So they want you to go to work. Go ahead, go to work. Make an income, because then we can tax it. Yes, sir.
Does this have an off?
Work release?
Yeah.
It depends on a lot of factors. Really what it is, if you're like a non-violent criminal or don't have like a criminal history, if they can kind of trust you to go outside and work, then yeah, they'll let you do it. So it happens a mild amount. Yeah.
Also, like, if you're the government clearing, like, would it be different? Sort of like,
It's possible, but probably not really. They probably kind of see private and public sectors equally. That's a good question. I have to kind of look that up again. Next one, real fast, is when you are actually full-time in prison. But we do have kind of varying degrees of our prison system. So I want to give you the bottom level first. We have a minimum